I opened the door and froze. My son and his wife stood there with 2 suitcases and smug smiles, as if they owned the place. For a moment, I thought I must be dreaming. My quiet evening had been interrupted by the sharp ring of the doorbell, and now here they were, standing on my porch like 2 unwanted guests. The smell of my evening tea was still warm in the air behind me, but suddenly it felt sour. "Mom," my son said flatly, his tone more like an order than a greeting. "We're back. Just clear a room." My chest tightened. I hadn't seen him in weeks. No calls, no messages. And now, he stood there acting like nothing had happened. I forced myself to breathe. "Back? What do you mean, back?" His wife rolled her eyes, shifting 1 suitcase against the doorframe. "Exactly what it sounds like. We've decided to come home. You've got all this space. It's only fair." The word fair stung me like a slap. Fair? I had worked my whole life to keep this house, to make it a home. I raised him here, sacrificed here, and now they barged in with decisions already made. "I wasn't asked," I said, steady but sharp. "This is my home. You don't just decide." My son avoided my eyes, muttering, "We lost the apartment." I stared at him. "Lost it? How?" His wife jumped in before he could answer, her lips curling into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Does it matter? That place was a dump anyway. Finally, we'll get to live somewhere decent." My jaw clenched. She said it like she was moving up in the world, as if my home was a prize they had been waiting to claim. I stepped back, gripping the edge of the door. "You can't just show up with suitcases and expect—" "We don't expect," my son interrupted, his tone harder now. "We need. And you have plenty of room." I searched his face, looking for the boy I raised, the boy who once thanked me for every packed lunch, every scraped knee bandage, every late-night talk. But his eyes were cold, distant. His wife brushed past me, her perfume leaving a sharp trail of defiance. "We'll take the upstairs room. It's bigger." I turned to stop her, my voice rising. "You're not moving into this house without my permission." She dropped 1 suitcase in the hallway and smirked at me. "Permission? We're family. That means this house is practically ours too. Isn't that right?" I felt heat rise in my chest, my pulse hammering. "No," I said, each word heavy. "This house is mine. Mine alone." For the first time, my son looked at me with something like guilt, but it flickered out quickly, replaced by a shrug. "It's temporary. Just until things settle. Don't make a big deal out of it." I wanted to scream, to slam the door, to demand answers, but I swallowed the storm inside me, afraid of what might spill out if I let it. "I deserve a say," I whispered, more to myself than to them. His wife laughed under her breath. "Deserve? You've been living here all alone, wasting space. You should be grateful we're here to keep you company." Grateful. The word twisted like a knife. After everything I had given, after every sacrifice, they expected gratitude for barging in uninvited. I stood frozen, fighting the urge to cry, to shove them back onto the porch and lock the door behind them. But before I could speak, my son tightened his grip on his suitcase and pushed it over the threshold. "Let's just get inside," he muttered, already walking past me. His wife followed, her heels clicking against my hardwood floor like nails on glass. "Finally," she said with satisfaction. "A real home." I stayed at the doorway trembling, my hand still on the knob. My safe, quiet home had been invaded, my peace shattered, my heart heavy with betrayal. And as I watched them wheel their suitcases inside, cluttering the hallway with their arrogance, I knew one thing for certain. They hadn't just come back. They had come to take, and they wheeled their suitcases inside before I could stop them. The sound of their suitcases on my hardwood floors was louder than any insult. Each wheel echoed down the hallway like a warning, grinding away at the peace I had built for myself. I stood in the living room, watching as they dropped their bags on my rug without so much as a glance in my direction. The space, once open and warm, felt smaller instantly. Their jackets were tossed over the back of my chair, their shoes scattered by the door. My home didn't feel like mine anymore. I folded my arms. "You can't just throw your things everywhere." "This is not a hotel," my son sighed, dragging one bag closer to the couch. "Relax, Mom. We're only making ourselves comfortable." Comfortable. That word made my chest tighten. I had worked for years to make this house a place of comfort for my family, and now it felt stolen from me in seconds. His wife leaned against the wall, scrolling through her phone. "Comfortable is the least we deserve after what we've been through." I narrowed my eyes. "What exactly have you been through?" She looked up, her smile sharp. "We didn't just lose the apartment. We got kicked out. Evicted. The landlord had it out for us." I turned my gaze to my son. "Is that true?" He shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my eyes. "We fell behind on rent. That's all. All? My voice cracked. You fell behind and now you think I'll just pick up the pieces? His wife's laugh was high and careless. Oh, please. Don't act like you can't handle it. You've got this whole house and your bills aren't that high. It's not a big deal. I clenched my fists. Then where was your money going? If not the rent, then what? She flipped her hair over her shoulder with a shrug. Trips. Experiences. Life is too short to be miserable in a crummy apartment. I could barely breathe. Trips, while they let their home slip through their fingers. Trips while they came to mine with suitcases full of entitlement. You chose vacations over responsibility? I whispered, my son's voice hardened. Don't lecture us. We're here now. That's what matters. I felt my heart ache, but I stood taller. If you're staying here, then you will contribute. This house runs on bills, groceries, hard work. You'll need to share that burden. His wife snorted, tucking her phone into her pocket. Bills? We're family. You don't charge family to live with you. I met her gaze, refusing to flinch. Family doesn't take advantage. My son's shoulders sagged, but his tone was cutting. You'll manage. You always do. The words hit me harder than I expected. You'll manage, as though I had been put on this earth only to absorb their failures, only to clean up their messes. No, I said, my voice low but steady. Not this time. For the first time, silence hung heavy between us. His wife raised her eyebrows, clearly amused. You think you can scare us with that tone? I shook my head. It's not about scaring you. It's about reminding you that this house is mine, and I will not be walked over. My son glanced at the floor, mumbling something under his breath, but his wife stepped closer, her expression smug. You'll change your mind. You always do. Sooner or later, you'll realize it's easier to let us stay. Her confidence chilled me. She believed I would cave because maybe in the past I had. I had forgiven too easily, looked the other way, carried their burdens. But this time, something inside me had shifted. I stayed quiet, letting the silence answer for me. They went about unpacking as though my words meant nothing. His wife scattered her makeup on my bathroom counter, her clothes across the bed in the spare room. My son stretched out on my couch like it belonged to him. I cleaned up their trail behind them, fury growing with every step. I felt invisible in my own home. Later that night, as I passed the doorway to my bedroom, I saw her. She wasn't unpacking, wasn't tidying. She was standing near my dresser, her fingers hovering just above my jewelry box. Her eyes flicked toward me for the briefest second, then back to the little gold latch. And in that moment, my heart stopped, because I caught her already eyeing my jewelry box when she thought I wasn't looking. By the third day, I noticed food disappearing, money missing, and whispers behind closed doors. The fridge was nearly empty when I opened it that morning. Cartons half drained, leftovers gone, and a smear of sauce on the counter, as if someone had eaten in a rush and left without cleaning. I stood there staring at the shelves, remembering how carefully I'd budgeted for the week. I called out, "Who ate the casserole I made last night?" That was supposed to last for days. From the living room, her voice floated back sharp and dismissive. It was bland. Honestly, you should be grateful we keep you company, even if your cooking isn't much to brag about. The insult struck deep, but I forced myself to keep steady. It wasn't about taste. It was about planning. My son shuffled into the kitchen, head down, avoiding my eyes as he reached for the milk carton that was already nearly empty. He poured a glass and mumbled, "Stop making a fuss. Food's meant to be eaten." I slammed the fridge door shut, the sound echoing in the cramped silence. "Not stolen," he froze, then sighed heavily. "Mom, don't dig into things you won't understand." My voice cut like ice. "Try me." For a moment, he opened his mouth as if to explain, but then his eyes flicked toward the hallway where his wife had disappeared, and he swallowed the words back down. He chose silence. The pit in my stomach grew heavier. They were hiding something, I could feel it. The way they whispered at night when they thought I was asleep, the sudden quiet whenever I entered a room, the way my purse felt lighter each morning. That afternoon, as I wiped the counter, the phone rang. I almost didn't answer. But when I did, a man's voice came through, deep and impatient. "Is Daniel there? Tell him he still owes for last month. And if he doesn't pay, we'll have to handle it differently." My blood ran cold. "Who is this?" I demanded. But the line went dead before he could answer. I gripped the receiver, my heart pounding. My son, debts? It explained the eviction, the missing money, the lies. I went to the table and opened my notebook. I started writing down every receipt, every withdrawal, every grocery bill. Then I checked my bank statements. Small amounts missing, withdrawals I hadn't made. Later, when I confronted them lightly, his wife just laughed, tossing her hair back. "Honestly, you're acting paranoid. If money's gone, maybe you misplaced it. At your age, things slip your mind. Her cruelty burned me, but I kept my expression flat. I don't misplace money. I account for every dollar, she smirked. Well, maybe you should relax. You'll give yourself a heart attack with all that stress. I looked at my son, hoping, begging, for some sign of honesty. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He stared at the floor, his hands shoved deep in his pockets like a child caught stealing candy. The silence between us said more than words ever could. That night, as they laughed together in the other room, I slipped quietly into the hallway where his jacket hung over the banister. My hands trembled as I reached into the pocket. My breath caught in my throat. Inside was a crumpled slip of paper. I pulled it out slowly, smoothing it under the dim light of the lamp. It wasn't just a receipt. It wasn't a bill. It was a pawn shop ticket, and printed neatly on the line for item received were my initials. My necklace. My necklace was gone, and in that moment, every suspicion hardened into icy certainty. They weren't just careless. They were thieves under my roof. The pawn slip had my initials on it. My necklace, gone. The moment I held the crumpled paper in my trembling hands, my heart dropped into my stomach. My favorite gold necklace, the one my late husband gave me on our 20th anniversary, was listed in black ink, reduced to a pawn shop receipt. The living room looked like a battlefield, half-unpacked luggage spilling clothes across my floor, their shoes scattered by the door, half-empty cups left on every surface. My once neat and quiet home felt alien, overrun. I clutched the slip tighter, my pulse pounding. I walked into the room where they lounged like they owned the place. My son had his feet propped up on my coffee table, scrolling through his phone. His wife, sprawled on the couch, chewed gum and flipped through one of my magazines as if she lived here. I didn't waste time. Where is it? My son blinked, confused. Where's what? My necklace. I tossed the pawn slip onto the table in front of them. This says it's sitting in a pawn shop, instead of in my jewelry box. For a moment, silence hung heavy. Then his wife let out a sharp laugh, the kind that grated like nails on glass. You must have misplaced it, she said smoothly, leaning back as if bored. Old people forget things all the time. My son's jaw tightened, his eyes darting to hers before flicking back to me. Mom, maybe you just don't. I cut in sharply. Don't you dare gaslight me. I know what I saw. That necklace was mine, and now it's gone. And you... My eyes drilled into him. Let it happen. His wife rolled her eyes, smirking. It's just jewelry. What do you even need it for? You don't go anywhere. You don't have anyone to impress. The words sliced me open, but I kept my voice steady. That necklace wasn't just gold. It was memory. Love. It was mine. They shared a look, something wordless passing between them. And in that moment I understood. This wasn't just about a necklace. This wasn't a one-time mistake. You've been selling my things, haven't you? I whispered, fury creeping into my tone. Not just the necklace. What else is gone? Her smirk faltered. His face turned pale. That was my answer. I took a step closer. What have you been doing with the money? The wife snapped. Too quick. Too defensive. We had no choice. The slip was gone from the table, snatched up by my son. His hands shook as he crushed it into a ball. It's not what you think. Then tell me what it is. I pressed, my voice low and dangerous. His shoulders sagged. We owed money. A lot. It's gambling. We just needed something fast to cover it before things got worse. I stared at him, my only child, and felt my heart crack open. This wasn't just carelessness. It was betrayal. You stole from me to feed your addiction, I said softly, almost too calm. He flinched like I'd slapped him. His wife, however, didn't blink. She tilted her head, chewing her gum louder, her voice dripping with disdain. What's the big deal? It's not like you were using it. You've got more than enough tucked away, don't you? Always saving, always hoarding. Maybe it's time some of that went to someone who actually needs it. My hands curled into fists, but I forced myself to stay still. My anger hardened into something sharper. Control. Every word you're saying, I murmured, pulling out my phone from the pocket of my cardigan. Is on record. Their heads snapped toward me. For the first time since this nightmare began, their smug expressions cracked. What? My son whispered, his face draining of color. I tapped the glowing screen. The little red dot blinked steadily back at them. I've been recording since I walked in. The gum in her mouth froze mid-chew. My son's phone slipped from his hand, clattering onto the floor. The room fell silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. They froze when I showed them my phone screen. They thought I was weak, but weakness doesn't set traps. The morning after I caught them, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea. Sunlight spilled across the table, warm and golden, yet it felt more like a spotlight on a stage. I wasn't trembling anymore. The fear, the disbelief, it had burned away, leaving something colder, sharper. They had stolen my jewelry, pawned my memories, and sneered when I confronted them. But if they thought they could strip me of my home, my dignity, my future, they were about to learn what it meant to underestimate me. I watched them through the doorway as they laughed in my living room, shoes on my rug, the television blaring as if this were their house. Their arrogance was growing by the hour. By the second week, they stopped pretending to be guests. They brought friends over, loud strangers who left beer cans on my counters and cigarette smoke in my curtains. My home, the place I had guarded like a sanctuary, reeked of intrusion, but I smiled. I cleaned up quietly after them. I brewed extra tea. I kept my tone light, my eyes down, let them think I was giving in, because I had a plan. One evening, while my daughter-in-law was rummaging in her oversized purse, I saw the corner of a folder peeking out. When she left the bag by the couch, I accidentally brushed past it and glanced down. The bold lettering made my stomach twist. Legal guardianship. Transfer of property. The pages weren't complete. Her messy handwriting filled some blanks. My name, my address. She was preparing to shove me into a nursing home, and with my son's signature, claim this house as theirs. For a moment, my vision swam. They weren't just parasites. They were predators, and their claws were inches from my throat. But instead of panic, I felt a grim sort of clarity. They had shown me their hand. Now it was time for me to play mine. That night, I set the trap. I sat with them at dinner, my voice calm, my hands folded. You know, I said, maybe you're right. I can't live alone forever. Maybe it would be easier if someone else managed things. Her eyes lit up like a cat catching the scent of blood. She leaned forward, fork clinking against her plate. See? I told you she'd come around. Soon this place will be ours. My son chuckled nervously, but his wife's confidence swallowed the room. Don't worry, Mom, he said, avoiding my eyes. You'll be taken care of, I smiled. A slow, deliberate smile that made her lean in closer, sure of her victory. Yes, I murmured. You'll take care of everything. She grinned, triumphant, and I let her believe it. I asked questions, soft, innocent things, about their plans, about what they'd do once the paperwork was signed. Every word they spilled, every cruel little detail, I tucked away, and when my son muttered about how much the house might sell for, I nodded, as though proud of him for thinking ahead. Inside, my blood boiled, but I held my mask firm. They thought they had broken me. They mistook my silence for surrender. But all the while, my phone rested in my pocket, its microphone open, recording every word. By the third night, they were bragging openly, as if I no longer mattered at all. They talked about new furniture they would buy, vacations they would take with the money they'd squeeze from selling my home. I sipped my tea, smiling faintly, every inch the picture of compliance. And when my son's wife laughed and said, "Soon this place will be ours," I raised my cup and said softly, "To new beginnings." She clinked her glass against mine, smug and certain. My son swallowed hard, but said nothing. If only they knew the truth, that I had already invited someone else to dinner. Not a neighbor. Not a friend. The police. The knock at the door this time wasn't theirs. It was the law. The sound echoed through the hallway, firm, steady, undeniable. Not the careless thud of their friends arriving for another loud evening. Not the shuffle of shoes on my rug. This knock was heavier, authoritative. I rose slowly from the kitchen chair, my teacup still warm between my palms. In the living room, my son and his wife froze. Their conversation cut mid-sentence. His phone slipped from his hands onto the couch. Her eyes darted toward her half-zipped bag, where those papers still waited to be filled out. Another knock. "Police, open up." I set the cup down and walked calmly to the door. My heart should have been pounding, but it wasn't. For the first time in weeks, it was steady. I opened the door wide. 2 officers stood there, uniforms crisp, expressions grim. "Ma'am," one said politely, "we need to speak with the residents of this address." Behind me, chairs scraped against the floor. My son's voice wavered. What's this about?" "Outstanding warrants," the officer said flatly. His eyes swept past me into the room. "We've had several complaints as well. Neighbors reported disturbances, suspected theft. We'll need to ask you both some questions." My daughter-in-law's face drained of color. "This is a mistake," she snapped, her voice too shrill. "We didn't do anything wrong." But even as she protested, the second officer's gaze narrowed on the bag slumped against the couch, the edges of official forms sticking out like damning evidence. I turned, my voice level, calm. They've been here for weeks. My food, my money, my home, all taken. And they've been selling my things. I reached into my pocket and placed my phone on the officer's open palm. Everything is here. The threats, the admissions, even the plans to put me away. My son lurched forward, desperation flooding his face. Mom, please don't do this. His voice cracked, a child's cry in a man's body. We're family. You can't just... His wife cut him off, her eyes blazing. You'll regret it, she hissed at me. Without us, you'll rot in this house alone. You think the police will take care of you? You think anyone will? Her venom rolled off me like rain. I stood taller, meeting her glare. No, I said softly, every syllable sharp as glass. I'll finally sleep in peace. The officers moved in, their presence filling the space. One retrieved the pawn slips from the drawer where I'd placed them earlier, each slip a scar of betrayal. The other began reciting rites, his voice steady over the sputtering protests. Neighbors gathered outside as the commotion spilled onto the porch. Mrs. Doyle from next door folded her arms, muttering, "About time." Another man from across the street shook his head. We've all heard the shouting. None of us dared step in. Their voices became a chorus of quiet justice, each confirming that what I'd endured had not been invisible. My son sagged between the officers, shame heavy on his bowed head. His wife fought harder, spitting words, kicking at the floor, her curses snapping like whips in the cool evening air. But the handcuffs clicked shut all the same, and as they were marched down the steps, their suitcases dragging behind them, the very suitcases that had scraped across my floors the day they invaded, I felt the weight lift from my chest. They didn't stride out as victors this time. They didn't smirk or sneer. They crawled, their heads low, tethered by chains, stripped of their arrogance. I stood at the doorway, hands clasped, my heart calm at last. They were let out in handcuffs, suitcases dragging, heads down, almost crawling. The silence after they left was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. For the first time in weeks, the air inside my home was clean again. No smoke clinging to the curtains, no shrill laughter bouncing off the walls, no suitcase wheels scraping across my hardwood floors. Only silence, sweet, pure silence. The next morning I called a locksmith. I watched as he replaced the locks on every door, the steady turn of his tools clicking like punctuation marks on a new sentence in my life. When he handed me the new keys, they felt heavier than I expected. Solid, certain, mine. I moved through the house like a woman reclaiming sacred ground. I opened windows wide, let the air rush in, carried their trash out in heavy bags. The living room was scrubbed of their clutter, the kitchen cupboards restocked with only what I chose to put there. My jewelry box was emptier now, but it was safe, locked away in a place they'd never find. And yet, as I folded the last of their abandoned clothes into a garbage sack, I felt a sting deep in my chest. Because beneath the anger and relief, one truth still gnawed at me. He was still my son. I remembered his childhood laugh, sticky fingers reaching for mine, the way he used to run down the hallway when his father came home from work. For a moment the ache almost broke me. I pressed a hand to the wall for balance. But memory is a dangerous thing. It can blur the edges of truth. The boy I raised was not the man who had stolen from me, lied to me, and planned to throw me away. Love didn't mean blindness. Family didn't mean surrender. As I stood in the quiet, a realization settled heavy in my bones. I had let this happen. I had enabled too much, excused too much, looked away from too much. I thought sacrifice was love. But sacrifice without boundaries only bred contempt. Respect doesn't come from giving everything away. It comes from holding the line. From saying no and meaning it. That week, I redecorated. I stripped the couch of their stains and laid down new cushions, fresh and firm. I repainted the walls a lighter shade, one that caught the sun better. I placed flowers on the table again, bright, living things that reminded me life had color left in it. Each brushstroke, each new cushion, each vase was more than decoration. It was declaration. My house, my rules. When Mrs. Doyle from next door stopped by with a pie, she shook her head knowingly. "You did the right thing," she said, her voice low, certain. I looked around my kitchen. Clean, mine, peaceful. For the first time in years, I didn't doubt myself. For once, I said with a small smile, I did the right thing for me. The pie sat between us on the counter, steam rising, and I thought about how different the word home felt now. Not a place of intrusion, not a prison of tolerance, a sanctuary again. Night fell quietly that evening, the way it used to before all the noise and chaos. I locked the doors, checked the windows, and sat by the lamp with a book. My chair creaked familiarly under my weight. My tea cooled slowly on the table. For the first time in weeks, my hands didn't tremble when I lifted the cup. As the house settled around me, I allowed myself one last thought of them, my son and his wife, their sneers, their arrogance, their suitcases, their heads bowed in handcuffs. Would they come back one day? Perhaps. People like that always circle when they think there's still something left to take, but next time would be different. Next time they would find locked doors, and not just locks of steel and brass, but the lock inside me, a woman who would not bend. Some nights I replay it all, the knock, the suitcases, the lies. I sit at my dining table now, the same one where they once sprawled with their careless laughter and half-empty glasses. But tonight there is only quiet. Sunlight pours through the curtains, soft and golden, stretching across the table like a blessing. The house feels lighter, freer, almost as if the walls themselves are breathing again. I remember the sound of their bags dragging across my floors, the way my son looked at me, not as his mother, but as an obstacle. I remember her smug smile, the way she whispered about the house being theirs. And sometimes, yes, it stings. Sometimes I wonder how the boy I raised became that man. Sometimes I ache for what could have been if love alone had been enough to keep him honest. But bitterness is a poison I refuse to drink, because what I've learned through all of this is simple. Peace doesn't come from pleasing others. It doesn't come from giving until there's nothing left of you. It comes from boundaries, from courage, from knowing when to stand tall, even if you stand alone. Family is blood, yes, but respect, that must be earned. I realize now that justice isn't always revenge. Justice is accountability. They wanted to strip me of dignity, to take what I built with my own hands, to leave me discarded. Instead, they were the ones dragged out with their heads bowed, their lies exposed for all to see. And me? I stayed, in my home, with my name still on the deed, my keys in my pocket, my dignity intact. This table, this kitchen, this silence, it is mine, earned, protected. Neighbors still stop by from time to time, asking if I'm lonely. I smile politely because they don't understand. Loneliness is not silence. Loneliness is a house full of people who treat you like you don't matter. Silence. Real silence. That is peace. I redecorated not just to erase their mark, but to remind myself of who I am. The flowers on the table, the fresh paint on the walls, the new locks on the doors, all of it speaks of a woman who has lived, who has been tested, and who has chosen herself at last. If you're listening to me now, maybe you know that feeling. Maybe you've given too much, forgiven too much, stayed quiet too long. Maybe you've mistaken sacrifice for love, when really, it was only erasure. I tell you this because I learned it the hardest way. No one has the right to strip you of your dignity. Not strangers, not neighbors, not even your own blood. My son and his wife crawled out of here in handcuffs. I didn't need to scream or fight or strike them down. All I needed was truth, and the courage to let truth speak louder than their lies. They may come back someday, maybe with apologies, maybe with more schemes, but it doesn't matter, because this time the doors will be locked. Not just the doors of my house, but the doors of my heart. I will not bend again. They left crawling. I stood tall, and I intend to stay that way. If you believe dignity is worth protecting, no matter who tests it, subscribe, share your thoughts below, and never let anyone walk into your life carrying only greed.